Okay, I need a water break. Hold on. My voice is getting raspy. Hi friends, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if this is your first video. My name is Jane and I'm a U2 student at McGill University. So since you guys really seem to like my other study tips video, I decided to come out with another one just in time for finals. I have a lot of finals coming up and I'm sure you guys do too, so I really hope these tips will help you study. If you'd like to see more videos like these, please don't forget to subscribe and like the video and leave a comment down below telling me which finals you guys have. Okay, I have quite a lot of tips. So the first one I'm going to start out with is to start with the long-term tasks that you have to do. So what I mean by that is, let's say you have an essay due tomorrow and you have a 90-page chapter to read for next week. Ideally, you should be starting with the 90-page chapter first and then moving on to your essay. I know this is kind of like against how we function as students because we prioritize whatever is due like the next day. If you're planning accordingly, if you're spreading out your work for your long-term tasks, so let's say 10 pages a day for 90 days, then it shouldn't take you long at all, and then you should be able to move on to the essay that you have due tomorrow. My best advice to you is, instead of always leaving things to the last minute and doing it the day before, it's really better to spread it out over several days, possibly weeks, so that you don't have to cram everything into one day the day before, which is definitely gonna stress you out. Tip number 2 that I have for you guys is to plan based on time limit rather than time of day. So instead of saying at 2 p.m. I'm gonna study for social psych, at 3 p.m. I'm gonna study for stats, ideally you should be saying I'm gonna spend 30 minutes studying for social psych and then an hour studying for stats. I find this is really useful because most of the time, like, so many unexpected things happen in our lives that we can't possibly plan for every hour of the day and expect ourselves to stick to that. So with the time limit, it doesn't matter what time of day you do whatever you have to do. It doesn't even matter the order, as long as you're only spending that amount of time on that specific task. What I find really helpful is I usually write how much time I'm gonna spend for each task, and then I kind of plan my day that way. And then I add up the total amount of time I expect myself to be studying. And sometimes I find myself with like 13 hours of work to do, which is just literally impossible because I sleep for 8 hours, which gives me 16 hours in a day, plus showering, cooking, eating, and working out. It just does not add up to a full day. So typically I kind of aim for 8 to 9 hours of work per day, which is perfect because it gives me enough wiggle room in case something unexpected happens or in case I have to run an errand. Tip number 3 is to make shorter to-do lists. And I know this is difficult. I am definitely guilty of making excessively long to-do lists and expecting so much of myself, but in the end, I never ever finish. It just stresses me out more than I already am. So if you have shorter to-do lists and you end up finishing it, you can add tasks to your to-do list rather than not finishing a super long list, stressing out, reorganizing, and replanning. Tip number 4 is a really obvious one, but I feel like a lot of people kind of ignore this, but it's that you still need to study for your exams. Even though it is open book, you have your notes, you have the internet, and I guess your friends to do the exams with, it's because you can't command find everything in the textbook. Even if you do command find, I'm pretty sure you don't have enough time to actually read over like a whole section based on whatever it is they're asking for and then learn it during the exam. Like, even if you have all of these resources at your disposal, you still need to be familiar with the concepts and the topics that are discussed on the exam. You don't have to memorize, obviously. Most of my exams are multiple choice, and what they've done is a forward-only process, and everyone has different questions on each page. So it's not like everyone has the same question on the first page and the second page. It's all mixed up. So with the forward only, especially, it's really difficult to be like looking through the textbook and trying to learn a concept when you don't even know what other questions are coming up and how much time you need for the other questions. You definitely need to know the material. You can't just ace it like that. Another thing that I've noticed that my professors do to make sure that people don't just command find everything in the textbook is that they use different words other than the actual word that we're being tested on. So for example, instead of using the word aphasia, they'll say damage to a part of the brain, something like that. So it makes it so much more difficult to command find something like that if you don't know that aphasia equals damage to a part of the brain. The fifth study tip that I have for you guys is something that I find is really useful. It's something that I do to study for my exams. I have little tricks that I put into my notes. So what I mean is, for one of my classes, social psychology, all we're tested on is the textbook. So each textbook chapter is around like 80 to 90 pages easily, and we have to do 3 to 4 chapters per test. Obviously for the final, it's gonna be like 12 chapters of 90 pages each. What I do is when I'm reading the textbook, I do notice there are a lot of studies in there, and I don't necessarily want my notes to be just as long as the textbook chapters. So instead of writing everything about the study in my notes, I typically just write the names of the experimenters, and then I write like a really short summary of what the experiment was about and then the findings of the experiment. During the exam, if he mentions an experiment and I know it sounds familiar, I'll go into my notes and look for it. Once I find it, I can see who the experimenters were. So if he's asking for specific details about the experiment that I don't have in my notes, I'll just command find those experimenters' names in the textbook, which will lead me right to the experiments. This is something that I thought was really useful because it allows me to go right to where I need to go in the textbook. And I find a lot of online school is all about that. It's finding these little quick tips and tricks on how to easily access textbook information based on your notes. Sometimes I will quote passages from the textbook relating to certain concepts, or for example, I'll put the experimenters' names in my notes, so that way I can just easily command find whatever it is I need to find, and then it'll take me right to the paragraph that has all the information and all the details about the topic that I need to know. Tip number 6 is to give yourself a break. Honestly, I know I've been talking about so much studying and non-stop studying, but we're crammed, like at least in my case, I'm crammed in my room literally 24/7. I barely leave the house. The only times that I do leave the house is for work. I know, such a sad life, but the only comfort that I find in this is that I'm not spreading the virus and I'm not helping other people spread it. Basically, I'm just confined to like these 4 squares of my room, and I wake up, I study, I sleep here, I relax here. Everything happens in my room. Yes, I do FaceTime friends. I'm always FaceTiming my boyfriend, so I do have social contact, and I also have my parents that I live with. But it gets really depressing just staying in your room literally all day, every day. My best advice to you is to honestly give yourself some relaxed time. One way to do this is you can say after a certain amount of hours of work that I've done, I'll give myself this amount of time to relax. So for example, after like 3 hours of studying, you can give yourself, I don't know, 30 minutes of Netflix or 30 minutes of reading time, and then you continue down the day like that. I find it's pretty helpful for giving yourself a break and not burning out, especially during finals. You definitely don't want to be burning yourself out. Tips 7 and 8 kind of go hand in hand. The first one is that there's no memorization required, at least not at McGill. Everything is open book, non-proctored, possibly online access, so nothing has to be memorized, and I don't see the point in memorizing because it doesn't help you understand any better. You'll probably end up forgetting it like 2 semesters down the line anyway, so there's really no point. I'm like thriving in online school. I don't know about you guys, it is mad depressing, but I'm honestly doing so well. All of these tips have really helped me, and I really hope to help you guys with it as well. So what was I saying? So yeah, this semester I have been doing so well, and I think part of that is due to the fact that I'm no longer just memorizing random pieces of information. I'm actually genuinely understanding everything that I'm learning. Another part of it is because I actually genuinely love psychology. It's so interesting that sometimes instead of studying, I just feel like I'm like learning and having fun. My point is that it's not about memorization at all. It's purely about understanding, and chances are your profs won't even ask you memorization questions, so it'll be purely application based. Spending more time studying doesn't correlate to a better grade. Obviously, chances are if someone just slacks off, they're not going to do as well as someone who spent hours studying, but you just have to find little tips and tricks to use your time effectively, but also incorporate like little tricks in your notes that will help you succeed in the exam. The most studying that I do is the process of actually reading the chapters and making my notes. But besides that, I literally just read over my notes. It definitely depends on the program you're in, but for stuff like biology, psychology, memorization based courses, I think this is the way to go. Not gonna lie, I don't even know what tip I'm at. I think it's 9. Anyways, next tip is to go digital. Obviously, for multiple reasons. It's better for command find. You have less papers to flip through. It's much more organized than having like your desk spread out with papers. And just mainly like, yeah, the command find option. And also you'd be saving the environment. So win-win situation. Next tip, I think it's tip number 10. It's to not be overconfident in your exams. I did the mistake of doing this. My first 2 exams for stats and social psych, the questions just seemed really easy to me, so I kind of breezed through the exams. And although I did get 86 in one of them and then 90 in the other one, the next exam for both classes, I told myself, listen, even if they're easy, you have to review over the questions, double check your answers, and since you can't move back onto the previous page, really make sure that your answers are correct. My grades shot up from 86 to 97 and then from 90 to 100. So that just shows you how big of a difference it makes. I originally had a couple of organization tips, like how I schedule everything, how I plan everything on Notion, but I think I'm gonna leave that for another video because I feel like I've been talking for a really long time. And so I'm just gonna leave you with all of those tips. I believe there were 10. So if you guys have other tips that you would like to share with other people who are watching this video, it'd be really nice if you could leave a comment. If you did learn something new in the video, don't forget to like it and subscribe if you want to see more tips about university or about McGill in general. Good luck with all your finals. You guys got this. I will see you in the next video. Bye!